What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. At least for one night, the Golden State Warriors broke out of their slump. Remember, I talked about how in the Cleveland game, there's all this gloom and doom, and it was like they were just clearly just miserably cold from the perimeter. They had 14 unguarded catch and shoot jump shots against Cleveland. They made 0. They went 11 for 21 against the Sixers. That's gonna help a lot. Steph Curry, 8 for 8 from 3. Dennis Schroeder was a huge part of the first quarter run. He hit 3 threes. It just right away came out guns blazing. I'm a huge Dennis Schroeder believer. A lot of Warriors fans were annoyed with him and how he started. Anytime you change teams, it takes time to kind of figure out your role and get your confidence, get your rhythm. I think you guys are going to love that guy. He's a really, really good basketball player. I also thought he just brought some dribble penetration and made some things happen. As a team, the Warriors hit 22 threes and shot 56% from behind the three-point line. And then they followed the game plan that you're supposed to follow against Philly, which is run the floor every single damn time you can because Embiid is slow, and in general, they've got some older, slower guys. They're not going to run the floor. The Warriors had 38 points in transition this game. It was their third highest total of the season. Their highest, I want to say, was Portland. It was 40-something in the early part of the season. Then they had another 40-something in a loss against the Brooklyn Nets earlier this season. But that's their third highest transition total this year. And they just ran Philly off the floor, controlled it throughout. Philly never led in this game. I really didn't like Philly's offensive approach in this game. They didn't go to Embiid in the post at all with the starters. They were just kind of playing some freelance basketball and jacking up bad shots. And then finally, when Guerschon Yabusele checked into the game, that's when they started going to Embiid in the post, and they were getting good stuff every single time. Yabusele was setting up on the opposite wing, and he was just cutting hard and making himself available in the lane and drawing extra attention, getting catches there and finishes there. Philly post-ups were really good. But it's interesting because Philly's offense this season, when Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey are all on the floor together, is only generating 107 points per 100 possessions. And I think there's almost a little, there are certain teams that I think need to be more of a, keep the ball moving side to side. Let's play 5 out. Let's keep everybody involved types of teams. And then there are teams where I'm like, you should spam the same damn thing every single time down the floor kind of teams, right? Like earlier Dallas Mavericks teams before they added all this ball handling, it was made sense for them to play that way, right? This Philly team, I don't want Caleb Martin running action. I don't want Kelly Oubre running action. I don't even want Kyle Lowry running action. What I would like for this team to do is to steady diet of Embiid post-ups. When Paul George and Maxey are on the floor, I want Maxey Embiid 2-man game. When you're staggering, you can mix it up. That's one thing. But there's way too much dicking around from this Sixers team that doesn't play into the talent that they have. And it just kind of feels like a wasted opportunity. But anyway, Golden State took a big lead early on, and they just started feeding off the crowd, and they got going in transition like we talked about. And again, it's a really bad matchup for the Sixers because when they have the Golden State's like a blender, not even just in transition, but also in the half court. It's just all of these guys moving and cutting and screening. And it's just a lot to deal with. And that's a specific thing that Philly has always struggled with, which is just basically covering in space, whether that's transition or in the half court. Golden State ends up pulling away and winning by 34. Good win, too. That Sixers team had just recently gone through a stretch where they had won 10 out of 13 games. I thought Draymond Green and Steph Curry were both amazing last night. Steph Curry, of course, 8 for 8 for 3, but I also thought he just did a brilliant job of advantage creation, drawing that second defender up at the top of the key. A lot of inverted action with Kuminga and Wiggins that he was getting good stuff out of. I thought Draymond played a brilliant two-way game. He had 3 blocks. He was disruptive all night. It was a great playmaking game from him. His transition kick-ahead passes were a big part of what got Golden State going in transition. Again, kick-ahead passes are a vitally important part of transition basketball because it forces the defense to turn their head. So imagine in a transition defense situation, all the guys that are running back, they're looking back towards the basket they're trying to score on, right? They're looking up the floor, right? But they're backpedaling back in transition defense, so they're running back while looking up the floor, right? But as soon as you throw a kick ahead pass, it forces everyone to turn around and start looking at the basket they're defending because the ball is now on the other side of them. That is what opens up opportunities for the guys that are filling in lanes behind them to find openings. And that's where you start to get into rotation basketball in transition. And again, like if the entire goal of playing offense is to generate an advantage, meaning whether that's a 4-on-3 or even just beating a guy off a dribble and it's 5-on-4. When you have that advantage, it's much easier to play basketball, right? Especially when you have the spacing principles like we talked about earlier with the Boston Celtics. So once we're in those drive and kick situations, if you've got decent talent on the floor, that guy's going to drive, he's going to kick, he's going to find the next open guy, that guy's going to drive, he's going to kick, he's going to find the next open guy, and then eventually you're going to get a wide open three or something at the rim, right? But the hardest part is getting that initial advantage. And if you get into the half court, it's much, much harder to get that initial advantage. But if you can get that advantage just by throwing the ball up the floor in transition, like Draymond, just as soon as he gets that rebound or as soon as he gets that outlet pass, he's immediately firing it up to the first opening that he sees among the guys running their lanes, because he knows that will get the defense in rotation. Then they don't have to play crazy half-court basketball. They can just play off of that advantage until they get something that they like. They literally can feed into almost like a semi-transition sequence attacking in rotation. I thought Draymond was great on that front. He also did some surgical work in the half court as well, just like, high-low feeds to guys cutting along the baseline, things along those lines. Point is, Steph and Draymond, these are two guys that have been slumping, just as the whole team has been slumping. Draymond and Steph have had some truly ugly games over the course of the last month. We're not going to beat around the bush and pretend that wasn't the case. The Memphis game in particular was the bottom of the barrel, right? But these guys still have a really high ceiling when they are right. And I believe that what causes a basketball player to reach their individual ceiling is a combination of a bunch of factors. It's not just on the player. The player's going to do the work behind the scenes to take care of their body, to polish up their skills, to try to be ready. The coaching staff is going to do the best they can to get them in rhythm through the way they're organized. But it also comes down to the way that the team is playing as a whole unit, meaning how well they're defending, how well they're running up and down the floor in transition, how well guys are capitalizing on the advantages the start create. And it all feeds on each other, right? So for instance, if you defend and you get a stop, and then you push the ball up in transition, and in the transition chaos, Steph draws 3 defenders and throws a kickback pass to Buddy Hield at the top of the key and he knocks down a 3, or to Kuminga cutting along the baseline and he gets a dunk. All of a sudden, when you run back on defense, your team feels good because they just got to stop, so they know that works. Your offense just got a bucket. Kuminga's feeling more confident, or Buddy Hield's feeling more confident, whoever hits the shot. Steph is feeling good because he just made a play for a teammate. Now everyone's sitting back down in a defensive stance and they're invigorated by that, which causes them to play better defense, which causes them to be more likely to get another stop, which causes them to be more likely to get out and transition again, which causes them to be more likely to score again. And it's like this feeding machine, right? It's momentum in a lot of ways. But the same thing can happen in reverse. If you don't get a stop, and then you slowly dribble up the floor and you're in the half court, and Steph is having a little bit of trouble breaking free off of a screening action, but let's say he still does, and you get a little 4-on-3, and it ends in a kick-out pass, and the ball ends up in Andrew Wiggins' hand after you kicked to Kuminga in the corner, makes an extra pass to Wiggins up on the right wing, and he misses the 3. Or you get an offensive rebound and it goes right to Steph and he's wide open and he misses the 3. Like he did against the Cavs. Steph was 0 for 4 on unguarded catch and shoot threes against the Cavs. It's discouraging. Everyone slumps their shoulders a bit. You run back on defense. Yeah, you're still trying because you're a team that's an engaged professional basketball team, but there's just not quite that oomph on the defensive end on that possession because you're a little discouraged, which makes it statistically more likely that they'll score, which makes it statistically less likely that you'll get out in transition again, which makes it statistically less likely that you'll get a good advantage, which makes it statistically less likely that your role players or your stars will be able to capitalize on that advantage. And it can feed on itself. And it can become this draining thing. And it's like, this just isn't working. And then it gets more discouraging and more discouraging. And now guys are saying things in press conferences. And now there's Steve Kerr's bitching about shot selection and all. It turns into this momentous thing. So that's why I've always been such a big believer in how small tweaks can lead to big results. If you go get a player, let's just say Cam Johnson, for instance. If you were able to go get Cam Johnson, and he just was able to convert a few more of those plays, which fights that momentum more in the positive direction more often, then it's more likely that you'll be the best version of yourselves when you need to be. And we've seen that from what we saw from Steph and Draymond last night. Again, that's a good Eastern Conference team that you beat. I know they're out of the play-in now, but we all know the reasons why Philly's in the position they're in. They've been doing a lot of winning lately. That's not to say there's some, top-tier contender, but that's a decent win for Golden State last night. The point is, when Steph and Draymond are at their best, and everyone else can feed off of that, this is still a real machine. And like I talked about in the show yesterday, it's about this kind of loser mentality, which is do you guys want to punt? Do you want to punt and just give up on this thing, or do you want to go for it? And if you're going to go for it, then go for it. No half measures. You need you will not have a player as good as Steph Curry is for a very, very long time. Statistically, it's very improbable in the next decade that you'll have a player as good as Steph Curry is. And that's why I'm such a big believer in trying to make it work to the best that you're capable of in this situation.